What happened in sprint qualifying for the
Brazilian Grand Prix? Let's get into SQ1 then, where the bottom five were Alonso, Ocon, Tsunoda, Stroll and Zhou. Now I need to ask a very serious question. How, on God's green earth, green actually is very apt as well, is Zhou Guanyu that far back? He did a 1 minute 12.978. And the fastest was a 1 minute 9.4.
I genuinely don't understand why, because I don't feel like he was like this when he started in Formula One. Of course, the stake is not a great car, but look what Bottas is doing with it. And even, the worst drivers in the sport have good days as well, and sometimes will put in something a little bit better, but just so far off. Like qualifying especially is just so bad. It can't even, you can't be stressed enough how bad this qualifying has been. I'd love to know why, what is the proper answer to this?
Surely there's a performance clause in there somewhere. To be that far off, you're almost knocking on the 107% rule of not even qualifying for the main race. So, all right, that's the Zhou slander done. Also, Aston Martin, double knockout. Even Fernando Alonso couldn't make his way through to SQ2. Now, they may have just come a bit of a cropper from just the fact that it's a one session straight in, and Aston Martin Lance Stroll literally on the back row of the grid. Fernando Alonso just about missing out to a stake. I don't know how much you can take from this necessarily, but it's certainly not a good start to the weekend.
Their form is so bad. They are dropping so far off to the point where, is this now just a master plan in getting as much wind tunnel time for Adrian Newey as possible? Plummet down the order and basically make sure that Haas overtake them. Master plan. There we go.
Ocon, once again, I haven't seen exactly if there was any issues with his qualifying session, but off the back of Mexico, he was knocked out in Q1. We now come to here, knocked out again, and Pierre Gasly on the flip side of that has had 3 Q3s or SQ3s in a row. That's phenomenal from Pierre Gasly, but because you're so used to seeing Ocon and Gasly marginally different, that I always see them as a teammate partnership that is so closely matched, and yet you couldn't have more polar opposites over the last few weekends.
He's obviously moving at the end of the year. Is he just kind of done? I don't know, but it's not gone well for him, has it, for the last few weekends at all, even though it appears that he does now have kind of upgrades to his car. But yeah, Gasly is doing a sensational job, but Ocon not so much. I'm sure he's just desperate to get in that rocket ship of a Haas now.
Fingers crossed for him, he can start picking up his form a little bit more. And then Yuki Tsunoda, your GOAT, getting out-qualified by Liam Lawson extensively. Question, there's one from MLG Sports 123. Is this worrying for Tsunoda? I would say yes. I could almost see Tsunoda losing his seat full stop over being promoted to Red Bull. If they do want to swap in Colapinto and they keep Perez, this is the key thing, right? If Perez somehow, and I can't see it, but I think stranger things have happened. If Perez does keep his seat in 25, who loses their seat in the Red Bull family? I would say it would be Tsunoda. As unfair as I would say that is over the course of the season and how well he has done on occasion, they're not going to get rid of Lawson, I don't think.
Yeah, Yuki could be very worried. I think the key thing as well is he doesn't even now have that kind of Honda backing to fall back on, because Honda are leaving Red Bull. And then even worse for Tsunoda is because Honda, as a team, I don't think that this is just why Yuki Tsunoda has been in Formula One. He's done a very good job. But of course, him being part of that Honda family and his Japanese heritage is part of them wanting a Japanese driver in, and that's why he's been there. But he can't just rely on that, because not only that, but then Honda are going to Aston Martin, and we all know that Aston Martin is a team that have one driver locked in, and unless they want Yuki Tsunoda as soon as the Adrian Newey rocket ship arrives, and Lance Stroll could beat him and get preferential treatment and become world champion, I just don't see it happening. So yeah, it is worrying times for Tsunoda.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how the driver market transforms in the next season or two. Let's go to SQ2 then, where the bottom 5 for this particular session were Hamilton, Hülkenberg, Perez, Colapinto and Bottas. P1 Patreon member Ronak. Is Lewis Hamilton even trying anymore? Or is he just biding his time at Mercedes for the last couple of races of the season until he makes the move to Ferrari? Going out in SQ2 around a track like Interlagos is very unlike him. I do not even one molecule of me believes that he is not trying at Mercedes anymore. I think he wants to win. He wants to bow out really nicely in a team that he has been so successful with. But it's very clear that he does not work well with that car on low fuel. Categorically, throughout the whole season, he's been out-qualified comprehensively by George Russell over the course of this season. Even drivers like Hamilton can have seasons, and we didn't see it very often, did we? And up until 2022, he'd won a race in every single season he'd taken part in. So we're not used to seeing a slump in form, but I think just with Hamilton in this car, of course we have had moments. Silverstone, incredible, but most of the time he's not felt comfortable with it.
I don't think it's anything to do with the fact that he's lost motivation at Mercedes and things like that. There'll be an element to it that, he's looking forward to joining Ferrari, and I think much like Vettel had when he was at Red Bull and struggling a bit and then joined Ferrari and kind of had a new lease of life, I feel like that is going to happen to Hamilton again. But at this moment, yeah, it's all comes down to qualifying and just how much he's struggling there.
Certainly does, and obviously the other driver is it a surprise? Not really. It's Perez. Question from Steve353 is, why are Red Bull remaining with Perez with this continued bad form? My brain, my logic is all going, right, they're going to make a change for the last 3 races. It's going to be an audition. Chuck Lawson in, see what happens. But then I think, we spoke about it on our Twitch live stream, Tommy, where do you want Lawson to go into a Red Bull second seat when he's clearly not afraid to ruffle some feathers? I personally think he's taken it a little bit too far with this whole sort of elbows out, boisterous approach of, I'm not here to make friends and stuff like that. If you want a seat in the Red Bull team, in particular, the main one, you need to come across as a team player and someone that is more than willing to just slot in as Max Verstappen's number 2 if necessary. Like, that's what Red Bull want. We've talked about Leclerc and Sainz's relationship and Hamilton and Russell, how they take points off each other. That's not what Red Bull necessarily want or need. So there's that side as well. So right, just an absolute scramble, to be honest with you. No idea. I don't know.
It could backfire dramatically. Yes, it could work, and Lawson comes in and he's on the pace or similar to Max Verstappen, and he can at least get in the mix. But even if he gets in the mix, they're nowhere near McLaren, so he can't take points off Lando anyway, so what's the point? It's too much of a risk this late in the season to kind of do something so drastic.
Let's go to SQ3, where the top 10 were Piastri, Norris, Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz, Russell, Gasly, Lawson, Albon and Behrman. First question, MD Smythe. If it's the same order on the final lap, do you think they should or would you swap the McLarens? Yes. Oscar Piastri, importantly, did say in the Sky broadcast afterwards when he was being interviewed that he would, and they said that they've had conversations and he has said yes. Now, I found it that there was quite an interesting kind of, reading between the lines here, where I believe Oscar was very much answering of giving up a sprint win. Now, I think giving up a race win will be a very different story. I still think they should. This is the point now where it's like there's 4 races to go. You have to slot in if you want your team. Well, if you want your teammate to win the title, obviously he doesn't. But if McLaren want to win the drivers, they need to get their head teacher, sort of, I don't know what the word is, power out and go, okay, you have to put everything to Lando now, because he needs every single point, whether it's 1 point in the sprint or fastest lap or whatever it might be. Every single minuscule detail needs to go in Lando's favour.
Every point is going to count in this title. They've already thrown a lot away with Lando, not swapping, not just in Hungary, but Monza as well. This one's a no-brainer. Oscar, I watched that interview as well, and he even said, I understand that essentially it's the same for the team. It doesn't matter what order we finish in, but if I'm not in the driver's title, so when it comes to the sprint, he has to do it. It's going to be fascinating to see how he approaches the start as well, because they're going to be side by side on the grid. Will he just sort of let Lando go up the inside into turn one and then try and block the field, or
No.
or is he going to basically? I think
they
he'll go
wouldn't
ahead and then try and do it.
They wouldn't do
maybe
antics
Oscar,
like that, because
maybe Oscar Piastri secretly hoping that Lando has another one of his bad starts and then he doesn't have to do it.
Next question, Tyler136. Why does Lando bottle it when it matters most? 3/10 up the whole session, and the one lap that matters, he aborts it. I think it's harsh to say he bottles it when it matters most. He's been pretty damn good in qualifying this year. I will say it is disappointing for Lando to have had that domination throughout the entirety of qualifying, and then the final lap you make that mistake. Had Piastri been Verstappen, I think it would have been a much bigger story of Lando aborting the last lap, and oh wow, this is a bit of a missed opportunity. But Max is down in fourth. It's not a disaster, but yes, it was surprising to not see Lando just deliver that one final lap, because he'd been pretty much perfect up until that point.
I also agree that it's unfair to say that he's bottled it, because at the end of the day, this guy he's fighting for the world championship. He's the one in second place. He's the one that's going after Max Verstappen. He's the guy that's got a hell of a lot of points and is within reach of doing it. And yes, he's made a mistake, but he's been brilliant for the rest of the session, which has put him in a position where he can make a mistake and he's still second on the grid behind his teammate that's probably going to let him through to win the race anyway. So he's still in a fantastic position to gain a lot on Max Verstappen this weekend.
Next question, Malakin. Would you swap Behrman for K-Mag for the rest of the weekend after Ollie's performance today? From a performance perspective, yes. I think it goes without saying. Ollie's had more time in the car around this particular track on this particular weekend, and Ollie is up to speed. He made SQ3. He's looking really quick. But yeah, it depends. I think that obviously K-Mag will be desperate to feel better and get back in the car. It's his last season probably in Formula One, and he wants to be in the car, which you can totally understand. But from a performance competitive side, Haas, they are fighting in the Constructors' Championship right now to try and finish P6. So putting K-Mag in the car who's not feeling 100%, it's probably not wise, but it might have to happen. K-Mag might be arming the lawyers as we speak if Haas decide to go with Behrman.
I think from a pure performance point of view, it makes absolutely no sense for Haas to, as soon as Behrman jumps out the car, you'd think he's had all that running for qualifying, he's done a great job, but it's probably all going to come down to contracts, isn't it? And how that works from that side, because there's probably a long old contract based on the fact that if he can race, he has to race or something. So, and the fact that the Magnussen doesn't have that long left, he's going to want to just get in that car and race again. So
next question, P1 Patreon member Captain Obs3420. Is this race weekend the ultimate decider to see if the championship is on or off? McLaren look unstoppable and Max will have a 5-place penalty. Of course, this is for the main race, and looks to be slower than Ferrari and maybe Mercedes. I think every single weekend from here to the end of the season is it's on. And it has to be going in McLaren and Lando's favour every single weekend. So for me, this is a great opportunity with Max obviously taking that 5-place penalty for the main race. For Lando, with McLaren looking like the fastest car again by a solid margin around Brazil, he has to be taking this down to mid-30s, I would say. And obviously it depends on Max. Max might put in an incredible wet weather performance. There's still rain in the air potentially for Sunday and even tomorrow. So there's a lot of variables, but this has to be the point where Lando wins. Lando needs to win the sprint and the main race this weekend, or it is a failure.
On paper, it is basically the dream scenario for McLaren and Lando to get more points, but we've seen so many scenarios this year where we thought championship over after qualifying, and then it flipped on its head for the main race, either in Lando's favour or against Lando. So that's the best thing about this season, is it's just changing all the time.
Say Lando wins both the sprint and the main race, which is very possible. We put Max in fourth for both of those races, the sprint and the main race. There's a swing of 16 points, and depending on where the fastest lap goes, then all of a sudden we've got 31 going into the last 3 races and another sprint.
That's just over a race win with 3 rounds to go, and Red Bull are nowhere, and McLaren look like absolutely dominant.
So what I'm saying is, Tom, it's absolutely game on, and everybody needs to put their seatbelts on and get ready. And this is when McLaren have a double DNF and wipe each other out in the sprint. Sorry, but look, I'm just saying right now, theoretically, it is certainly on. Tommy, what are your final thoughts in a very concise, short manner?
Goodbye.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, everybody. P1 live show tickets are still available. Middle of December, end of season special. Would love to see you there. It's going to be a great worldy banger. And that's it. We'll see you tomorrow. Lots of love, sweet dreams. Take care. Keep pushing in the gym. And you know what? Bye. Bye.